Welcome back to the Bonfire Podcast. In this episode, I'll be sharing my own testimony. We'll be in Ephesians 3:17 through 18 tonight. I'll be sharing my own story from growing up and the transitions that I had to take through life and where I'm at now. So I hope you enjoy this episode and welcome to the podcast. All right, well, welcome back, y'all. Thanks for tuning in to the Bonfire Podcast. We are super excited to be at a new location, thanks to Mr. Brooks Huntley. We got a lot to cover tonight. I wanted to take this time tonight to share a little bit of my own testimony and what the Lord has just done in my life and get to know me a little bit more personally. I know we have so many cool guests that we've already talked to and that we're scheduled to talk to in the next few weeks and few months. And to get a chance to get to know me a little bit is what I want to do. So yeah, we're gonna get right into it. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Matt Cooper. I am a singer-songwriter out here in Nashville, Tennessee, now a podcaster. I'm 23 years old, and this is my story. So I grew up in church, and I grew up, typical, every Sunday, me and my family would go to church. I have such an amazing family. I'm blessed with two younger brothers, an incredible father, and a beautiful and incredible mother. And every day was a little different for us. We were a family super involved in sports. So I remember growing up, being the oldest child of three, I was always the guy that was trying stuff out. I was kind of the guy that tested out things before my younger brothers had to. So, when I started playing baseball, a few months later, my brothers were wanting to play baseball. I started singing and my brothers started singing, and we would always just kind of follow each other's paths. And it's something that I'm super thankful for. And I have a middle brother named Daniel. He goes to a college in Florida and is studying film. Amazing human being. And I have my youngest brother, David, who is studying acting in Georgia. He is also in college. And my brothers are my best friends, man. They're awesome. And growing up was such a blessing with them. But I remember growing up and finding these interests, finding a passion for baseball, a passion for sports, and getting to sing with my brothers. And it was funny, man, because we'd all just piggyback on each other. So, when middle school came along is when I think I started to kind of discover a little bit more about my faith. And before we jump into kind of the nitty and gritty, I want to share the verse of the night with you guys. And that's going to come from Ephesians 3:17 through 18. And I'm going to read it right now. And this is what it says. I love the NIV version better than the ESV version. So I'm just going to kind of say it out loud. But Ephesians 3:17 through 18, Paul is talking to the church of Ephesus. And he says these words, and he says, "And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, would have the power with all God's people to grasp how wide, how long, how high, and how deep is the love of Christ." And so my story is going to revolve around that verse, and we'll get to that in just a second. But so that was a little bit about my childhood, and I remember this one specific moment in church growing up. This was about middle school time. I remember sitting in church one day, and I remember seeing a scene from The Passion of Christ. And I was sitting at the little pew in church, and I still remember this kind of video playing on the screen of this guy, Jesus, and he was carrying this cross on his back. And he was going up this mountain, and you could see, this was little 6th grade-year-old Matthew. I could see just like the pain and struggle of this guy. And for some reason, it was just kind of touching my heart. And I remember seeing that scene of Jesus walking with this cross on his back. And I just broke down in tears at this pew. And I think that was kind of my first introduction to faith. That was my first introduction of my relationship with the Lord. I remember not too long after that, probably a couple weeks after, I remember I had a conversation with my dad about, okay, what is the gospel? What is this thing that you guys keep bringing me to on Sundays? And what is this pastor talking about? What is the gospel? Who is Jesus Christ? And I remember sitting on the living room stairs right there with my dad, and he was explaining all this stuff to me. And in the moment, I would understand some of it. I was still curious about some things, but more than anything, I remember just understanding the unconditional love of Christ and understanding the gift of Jesus Christ and what that meant for me, how that applied to me. And this was in 6th grade. And man, I so vividly remember that picture with my dad, and I'm so thankful for that moment that I shared with my dad. And to this day, I tell everybody my dad is the guy who led me to Christ and who started my relationship with the Lord, man. And so I'm thankful to have a father that introduced me to that. And so story kind of continues. So I'm in middle school now, and I'm on fire for God, man. I'm like, okay, 6th grade me, I got baptized. My dad was the one who baptized me. I understand like who I am. Like all these things were going for me. I was just taking another leap in baseball. I was really becoming a really good baseball player at the time. This was probably 7th grade now. And I was playing I was playing a little bit on the high school team, even as a 7th and 8th grader. And man, things were just going good. I had the most amazing friends. We were hanging out all the time. I felt like I was on fire. I was on fire for the Lord. Everything was going good, man. And it was a peak moment of my life. Years that I'm super thankful for. And I remember freshman years kind of when everything took a shift. My freshman year was tough, man, because I was introduced to a C word that nobody ever really wants to hear, and that's the word cancer. And that was the first time that my dad sat us down in the living room and had told us that mom was first diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, cancer. And that put a shift in everything, man. I didn't really know how to feel at the time. I was a freshman in high school. I had kind of just got out of this phase in middle school where I was understanding more of myself. I was understanding who I was, what my identity was. I had purpose, and then everything just kind of hit. And I remember sitting in that living room and getting the news, and part of me had this overwhelming peace that things were going to be okay. But part of me also had this sense of being angry at God. Like I had just gotten off these years of believing something, and then this thing happened. It's like, why would God allow this to happen? Why would he allow my mom, who is, one of my best friends, if not my best friend in the world, to be diagnosed with this and go through this garbage, man? And my mom, oh man, she's just like, you look at her and you can just see so much of Christ in her, and you see so much love, and she's just one of those people that she walks in the room and you put a smile on your face, man. And so that shift, that thing that happened was just, it hit me hard, man. And I remember at that time, I had my faith had kind of taken a toll. And so there were some practical things that I ended up doing. I was always kind of on a hill in a valley with God. Torrin Wells, he has this really cool song called Hills and Valleys, and I first heard it my freshman year of college when I was going through this, and I was like, man, that is literally kind of what I'm going through. And in the song it talks about how the Lord is the God of the hills and valleys, that even when we're at the top, he's there, and even when we're at the bottom, he's there. And sometimes we forget that at the top, sometimes we can forget that it's he who brought us to the top, and when we're in the valley, it's easy for us to go back to him. So we got to remember that life is always like this. It's a hill and a valley. And so that really stuck to me. So I started listening to different songs, trying to figure out what I was feeling at the time. I started kind of running from God and then coming back to God. And I remember vividly freshman year buying this prayer journal. And it was this small, probably like 4 inches by 2-inch little prayer journal, man. And my dad had introduced me to this book called The Prayer Circle. And what that entailed was me writing prayers in this. I would draw a circle. I would draw a circle in this prayer journal, and I would write down prayers that I wanted to ask God for. And I remember doing that freshman and sophomore year of high school. And I look back, and even though that is, it's really good to an extent, I started kind of making God almost like a genie. And I think that's a dangerous place to be in sometimes. But, figuring out my faith, I was kind of, that was part of the journey, is realizing that God isn't, God isn't some sort of genie. God is the same God today that he was back then. And he's the same God that I met in middle school. And so I started kind of figuring that out. But I remember buying this prayer journal and writing all these prayers in it, these different verses. I came to like some really cool verses, and so I'd start writing verses in there. And then sophomore year is when the Lord really, junior year was when the Lord really just wrecked my life, man. Kind of a crazy story, but one Saturday, my sophomore year of high school, I was playing varsity baseball, and I remember driving to practice Saturday morning. And the day before, I remember going jet skiing with a good friend of mine, Jack John. Yeah, really cool dude. If you don't know Jack John, you should know a Jack John in your life. But I remember going jet skiing with him the day before, and I had gotten some not so good sleep the night before, and I woke up early Saturday morning for baseball practice, just like a typical Saturday. And I remember driving to practice Saturday morning, and I got on the highway, and I was kind of out of it, and I remember slowly but surely drifting off the wheel. And before I knew it, when I got on the highway, I was driving in the grass field, just about to get on the highway, and I remember swerving, trying to get back on the road, and that's when my car took a whole 360. I ended up hitting the side of the highway rail, and my car flipped 4 times in the air. And I remember just sitting in that car, and I was literally just closing my eyes, and I was saying, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." I remember it vividly. And I remember just flipping, and I came to the realization that this was it. This was my time. This is it. And I had full intentions that Lord was taking me home, and I was scared. I just, it's a feeling that I can't even explain, because I don't think until you've actually experienced it that you'll ever like truly know the fear of it. And it happened so fast that I didn't really even know how to feel. But the crazy part about that whole story is that the blessing of it was my car ended up staying right side up, as in it wasn't upside down. So on the 4th flip, I was right side up, and I remember sitting there. I was in shock. I was literally just like this, and I remember some lady. I was looking out the side of my car. All my left, all of my windows actually in my car were shattered. I was seeing the thin air outside. My front window had a huge crack in it. You couldn't even see me because it was busted up. In fact, we'll try to put a photo in here in the edit right here, so you can see it. But I remember all my windows shattered. I remember looking out at this lady. it was kind of one of those moments that you see in the films where it's like they just get in an accident and it's like, oh, everything's so slow and like there's noises going on in the background. That's literally what it felt like. And I remember seeing this lady to my side and she was yelling something and I couldn't understand her. And she was calling the police and I think she was saying, am I okay? Am I okay? And I didn't know what to say because I was in shock. But I was sitting there and all my windows were shattered, man. And my phone, I was looking for my phone. I couldn't find my phone anywhere. I couldn't find my wallet anywhere. But the only thing that was in that car, all my windows were shattered. My middle console was open. And the only thing that was inside this car at this time was that prayer journal I had bought my freshman year of high school. And, I don't want this story to sound, churchy or, whatever. But man, I will say it was nothing short of a miracle, man. I ended up not having a scratch on my body. And I remember looking at that prayer journal and seeing that it was the only thing in my car. And it was open to this page and it read Ephesians 3:17 through 18. And it was that verse that I shared with you earlier. Paul is talking to the church of Ephesus and he says that I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, would have the power with all God's people to grasp just how wide, how long, how high, and how deep is the love of Christ. And I remember looking at that verse and I remember this overwhelming peace, man, that like the Lord was not done with me. That there was a God up there that cared for me, that he loved me, that he has a love unmeasurable that I can't even fathom, man. And it's this crazy story. I didn't have a scratch on my body. I remember getting out of the car after I finally figured out where I was and everything. I remember calling my dad and I said, Dad, I just got in an accident. I don't have much to say. I just need you to be here. And he hung up the phone and he was there in 5 minutes and he embraced me with the warmest hug that you could imagine, man. And it's crazy, man. I get to the ambulance comes. They take me to the hospital. My car's totaled. It's gone. They ended up towing it somewhere, and I don't even know where they put it. But I remember getting to the hospital, and I remember my baseball coach being there because my dad had told him what had happened. And the doctor came up to me and he said something that I'll never forget. He said, "Son, you're really lucky to be alive, man." And I remember my baseball coach just coming in out of nowhere, and he's like, "Doc, that's not luck, man. That's love." And it was at that moment that I really had this assurance that man, God uses things for his good, man, and he cares about me and he loves me and he's doing a good work in me. And I think at that moment too, I had more of a peace of my mom. I had more of a peace that the Lord was doing something in her and he was doing something in me through her. And it was just this reassurance, man. So, I get to senior year and we're kind of back on track a little bit. My faith is reassured in a sense, and my mom actually, praise the Lord, had been healed from her cancer, from her Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I remember just this cool relationship that I had with the Lord. And fast forward to college, man, that's where things kind of started questioning again. I think it's easy as Christians to always question. But I started questioning not only like the goodness of God, but also just everything that I was being taught, all these things that my parents were saying, all these things that my pastor was saying, all these things that I had come to grow up and believe, were they actually true? Did I actually believe them? And I remember the shift in my faith sophomore year. I remember talking with my good friends Jason Hamby and Tim Doyle and Matt Hartnell and Seaver Bransfield and all these really close friends of mine. And I remember asking the tough questions like, does God know everything before it happens? And does God, like, why do we even pray? Like, does God know who's going to heaven? All these tough questions that you ask yourself when you're presented with this sort of faith, man. And I remember diving into that, and it it reassured me in a way that I started growing tremendously in my faith, in which I started truly believing that the God that I believed in, that I built my relationship in, the God that came down and saved me middle school year, was the same God that was growing me in my faith my sophomore year of college, man. And sophomore year of college is kind of where I transitioned into starting to do music. I started to find a joy and a passion for it. Most of my years were spent playing baseball, and when music kind of came along, I just went hard with it. I remember writing these songs. I wrote 5 songs in one night my freshman year of college, and I grew this appreciation for music. I didn't know that I would end up being able to do it professionally. I just knew that I loved doing it, and I wanted to get songs recorded. So my sophomore year of college, going into my junior year, is when COVID hit. It's when everything kind of started shutting down. So I ended up moving back home, and I was a car salesman for Mazda. This is a crazy part of my journey. I remember selling cars, and I was an intern at this time, but my competitive nature, I was always trying to sell more cars than everybody in the dealership. And part of the reason that I got that job was because I had all these songs written, but I had no money to fund these songs and get them recorded. And for those that are in the industry, and Brooks will tell you this, man, it takes money to get these songs recorded. It takes money to get these songs sounding as good as possible. And so I worked for a car dealership for 6 months until I could finally afford a trip to Nashville. And when I was able to finally save enough and get to Nashville, I was able to record 5 songs that I had written in college that year prior. And one of those songs was kind of crazy. These 5 songs, I remember being in the studio with Skylar Taylor, Brooks knows Skylar, and Andrew, and all those guys, man. And we were in this studio, and there was this one song that I really didn't like. I had actually written this one the night before that I was going into the studio. So this was in my hotel room. And I remember writing this song, I had it unfinished, and I had to finish it. So I remember writing this full song the night before, and it felt rushed. It felt like, what am I saying here? And we get into the studio the next day, and I remember Skylar telling me, I think there's something special with this one, Matt. And I started releasing music on TikTok. I put out 2 songs of the 5 that we recorded, and I had no intention of releasing this one song because I didn't think it was good at all. But Skylar kept pushing me to release it, and long story short, we ended up putting that song out on TikTok, and overnight, man, it just did something that I would never thought. And that song's called Ain't Met Us Yet. And I remember waking up the next day, and it was #1 on the iTunes chart. It surpassed Bruno Mars and Ariana Grande. And I remember feeling like, this is it. I made it. This is it. I am famous. This is me. I'm Matt Cooper, baby. And man, was I so wrong, because the Lord really humbled me, man. And I'm so thankful for that moment. But, fast forward to kind of where I'm at now, being out of college and living on my own here in Nashville, Tennessee. Those moments come and go. And I'll be I can tell you that I think a lot of musicians would agree with me, man. It's hard. It's hard to stay at that place. It's hard to put so much into what you love, then to only see it get X amount of views on TikTok or streaming, and you put so much money and effort in it. And so I hit this point coming to Nashville this past August where I realized that I had put so much worth in my songs and in the music and art that I was writing that I was forgetting what my true identity was. I had come to a place in my life where music had become who I was and not just what I did. And I had to take a step back. I had to take a step back for a second because I had plans, and I did end up releasing my first album back in October of 2023. And at that same time, I remember getting the call that my mom's cancer had returned. And it wasn't just the same cancer from middle school. It was even worse. It was stage 4 pancreatic cancer, which if you're in the medical field at all or know anything about cancer, it's one of the worst ones you can have. And I remember just really having to take a step back, really having to remind myself that music is not everything. The fact that I put out this album and the next day my mom, gets diagnosed with this, I didn't want to do anything other than go home and be with my mom. And I think that as people in the creative space, we have to remind ourselves that this stuff is only temporary. I hope and I pray that whatever field you're in, whatever you're doing, that it's something bigger for yourself. You're doing it for something bigger than yourself, and that you wouldn't identify yourself in what you do, but you would know that there is an identity, that somebody has already identified you, and that you are a child of God, and that He cares for you, and that He wants the best for you. And I think in whatever we do, man, I think it should always be in a way to point people towards that bigger something, man. Because I remember going to a Kenny Chesney concert, and he kept reminding us that this guy always told him that if the light that is on you is bigger than the light that is in you, it will kill you. And so I want to remind you and encourage that tonight, that in whatever you're doing, know that your identity is not found in what you do, but in Christ. And so that's a little bit of my story and kind of where I'm at now. I've come to grow in my faith exponentially throughout the years, and I'm at a point in my life where I want to do more than just write songs. I want to be able to share my faith. It's something that I'm super passionate about. And I want to be able to continue to do art, continue to do music, but in a way that does it in the right way. I think I'm finally at a place where I can put out a song and I don't have to attach myself too much to it, because I know that it's for a greater purpose. It's for something bigger than myself. So that's kind of where I'm at now, and that's a little bit of my story. And so I want to encourage you to go back to Ephesians and go to that verse and remind yourself that the Lord is good, man. The Lord is watching over you, and He loves you, and we can't measure His love. We can't, even Ephesians says, how long, how wide, how deep, and how high is the love of Christ. It is immeasurable. It goes as far as east is from the west. And so I pray that you be encouraged by that, and that you would know a little bit of that love tonight. So now what I wanted to do is, now that I shared a little bit of my story, I put a Q&A on my Instagram, and for the last 5 minutes, I want to share some responses to some of these questions that we got. So Brennan Bastion asked, when do you think a man is ready for a relationship? Okay, this is total 360 here after my story. Well, I'm gonna come back to that one. So let's do this one. So Nick's Photos said, "What led you to want to make a podcast?" That's a good question. I've told the guys this, and I've told a couple guests this, but this podcast kind of stemmed from a purchase that I made back in October. It was Cyber Monday, and I was very lonely here in Nashville, and I didn't really have many friends, and the friends that I did have, I didn't really feel connected to as much as I do now. And so I remember wanting to buy this fire pit and having this kind of idea that I wanted to have people over on Sunday nights to just hang out with and talk about things with and get to know on a deeper level. So I ended up buying this fire pit on Cyber Monday at Tractor Supply, and I picked it up the next day, and that Sunday we had our first kind of bonfire, and I think maybe 4 people came, and it was some friends that I had met in college and a couple that I've met in Nashville since I had moved. And I would have these things every Sunday, and more people started showing up to them. And I remember just having these profound conversations with each other. And, we'd sing songs, and we'd ask stupid questions and share cool stories and talk about, what the Lord's doing in each one of our lives, and talk about work and talk about just, some great stuff. And, something around being around a fire and sharing stories with your best friends is just something really cool. So I remember taking that idea and really just kind of grasping with it the beginning of this year. And that's where the Bonfire kind of came to life. I had this want to bring what we did on Sunday nights to kind of this grander scheme. We still do the Sunday night things, but I had this grander scheme of wanting to pour into some influential people here in town, and some people that are in the creative space professionally, and wanting to give them a space where they can share their story, share their faith background, and really just kind of have a Bible study with these people. I think that a lot of the media outlets these days don't provide that opportunity for artists or athletes or different people. And part of that is because they have to protect the image and brand, and there's publicists and stuff involved, which is I totally, I get it. But for those that do come from a faith background, I think one of the coolest things about building an audience is that, you look at Brooks Huntley, or you look at Matt Cooper, or you look at Thomas Rhett, or, these big stars and actors that we follow, and getting to know them outside of the music lets you appreciate who they are a little bit more. And so, I hope that when the good Lord takes me home, that you wouldn't just see me as a singer-songwriter, as Matt Cooper, the singer-songwriter, Matt Cooper, the guy that wrote Ain't Met Us Yet and got to iTunes. I hope that you would see me as Matt Cooper, yes, the songwriter, but also the guy who is really just trying to pour out into people and sharing and being vulnerable with people, and doing something bigger than himself. And I pray that you would see that in all of our guests. And whether they're religious or not, everybody is searching for something. Everybody is trying to find meaning in their lives and trying to do stuff for that. And so I pray that you would see that in each guest that we bring on. I've got 2 more questions here. Let's see. So how is Mama Coop? Sending love to all the family. That's from Rooney Kathy. To be totally honest with you guys, Mama Coop is in a place where we could definitely use some prayers. We have been in this journey for a long time now. She was first diagnosed with pancreatic cancer last year, and she ended up defeating it this summer with the Lord's help, and it returned with a vengeance back in August. And we've kind of been in that journey since, of trying to fight this thing, and the doctors have been incredible, and we're still fighting to this day, and we're still believing miracles to happen, and we're still believing that the Lord is going to do what he needs to do, and we're going to continue to pray and lift her up. But we're definitely in a state now that if you are listening to this and watching this, we could definitely just use some prayers for healing and prayers for peace for my family, and that the Lord would surround us with good people. And he has already done that, especially with the guys that I'm sitting in front of right now, and the people that he's surrounded me with in Nashville and back at home. And he's doing a lot of great things, and my mom's story is inspiring a lot of people through the grace of God. And so just continued prayers would be appreciated. Let's see here. I'll do two more. How do you feel you've grown in your walk with God? I think that my walk with the Lord has really grown tremendously over the past few years. I'd say the past 2 years. I've come to a place where God is not just somebody that I go to when I need, but somebody that I kind of want to go to every day. Somebody that I want to spend time with. I think that just like a marriage or just like a relationship that you're in with somebody physically, I've come to appreciate growing together with the Lord and reading different things. And we just had Jay Stringer on last week, and reading his book and seeing how he is inspiring so many others through his education with addiction and how that relates to what the Bible says. That inspires me, man. And so I'm at a place where I want to do the same through my music and through this podcast. And I think that the Lord's just really doing something cool in my life, and I can't really explain. I still don't know to this day what the heck I'm doing, but we're just kind of along for the ride. So I know he's doing something special. So last question of the night, and it comes from Brennan, is a little off topic, but we're going to do it. When do you think a man is ready for a relationship? Never. Who said that? That was Brooks. Brooks just said never. I'm not going to answer this fully because we have a guy coming in the next few weeks who deals with relationship and sex and dating and what that really looks like, healthy, like what a healthy relationship looks like and stuff. So I'm not going to answer that too much because he's the expert on that. I will say for my own self, I'll be the first to admit that I have never had a girlfriend. I've never been in a relationship, and not because of I've never wanted to, but number one, I've always been a guy that's been in sports and following my passions, and I just feel like I've never really had the time to explore that kind of part of my life and explore like truly like a real relationship. And I've never been one to really want to fool around, if that's the right word, or get into things just to get into it. I will say that like I've gone through phases where I have felt very lonely and felt like a temporary fix feels better. But I've always been in the mindset that the first girl that I date, I want to date her for the rest of my life. I want to make her my wife. I want to build a long-term relationship with her. And it's harder said than done. There's a lot of things that I have had to work on and I'm still working on to be ready for that, to be ready to pursue that. But yeah, man, so I think it's just a matter of continuing to grow as a man and grow as a son of God. And I think along the way, you know, we just end up meeting people, man. I think that, you know, God has a plan for you, and he knows what you're going to do before you even do it. He has your whole life planned out. And so you have to think that along the way, maybe there's somebody there. I mean, the Lord doesn't promise us a wife or promise us a girlfriend or anything. In fact, it's a gift. It's a gift when we enter into those relationships. So I would say, don't rush things, and be content with where you're at now. You don't have to be in anything to feel loved. Learn to love yourself. Learn to what it means to be loved by God, learn to love God, and a good woman will see those features in you, and that's better than a short-term fix of trying to fill that hole inside of you, man. And I've been there. Trust me, I've been there. I know what it's like. But there's, if you're looking for something that's long-term and a forever thing, work on yourself, learn to love the Lord, learn to lean on his word. So that's all that we got for you guys tonight. I have loved doing these episodes. We're going to be doing these more. I think we're going to call them Ask Me Anything episodes. We're still building the show and kind of figuring out how it goes. But next week we'll have a guest on, and we're super stoked. And we thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.